All right, variables and expressions. We'll begin the unit by talking about what a variable is. So a variable is symbols used to represent unknown numbers or values. A lot of times in algebra, we will use letters to designate what for a variable. So letters like X, A, and B, any letter of the alphabet, is called a variable because it's used to represent a number or a value of a number that you do not know. So it replaces that number until you actually figure out what that variable represents. Okay, a term can be a number. So like the numbers 5 or 7, for example, each of those are separate terms. A term could also be a variable. So like the variables we just talked about, here we have x and now y, okay, another letter. Or it can be a combination of a number and variable, which is the product or quotient of a number or variable. So product meaning you could take, product means multiply, and quotient means divide. So if you're looking at an example, 5x, so that's a number and a variable combined, and you're multiplying them together. The operation in between these two is multiplication. Another example could be 7y. Again, you're multiplying 7 times y. But quotient is dividing, so another example could also be the variable divided by a number. So it's a combination of both a variable and a number. All right, an expression. An expression is a combination of variables and numbers. Okay? It does not have an equal sign. And usually when you see an expression, you want to simplify it or evaluate that expression if you can. So it's a combination of variables and numbers. So an example, right, would be 2x plus 4. Right? 2 and 4 are numbers. You've got a variable that's x. And so 2x right here is one term, because remember it's the product of a number and a variable. So here you have a product of 2 and x. And you're just adding another term, which is 4, because a term could just be a number as well. So there are two terms here. You've got 2x and you've got 4. The combination of those, whether you're adding them or subtracting them together, is an expression. All right, an equation is also a combination of variables and numbers, just like an expression that we talked about before, but this time it has to have an equal sign. And whenever you have an equal sign, you're trying to solve for something. So that would be the main objective when you see an equation. So an example here, you've got 2x plus 4, which looks like this expression. So if this was the only part, it would be an expression. But once you add equals 6, now that you have that equal sign, you can actually solve for what this variable x would equal in order to get 6. Okay. We're next going to talk about, because in this unit you're going to have to write verbal expressions and algebraic expressions. So you're going to have to know, looking at the symbols. This symbol stands for addition. This symbol here stands for subtraction. This one's multiplication. And this one's division. So what we're going to do is go over a couple vocab words that you should be familiar with to know that if you see these words, you know which operation you're going to be using. Okay, so addition, a couple words. You've got more than, the sum, so total, adding all things up together, plus, increased by, and added to. All of those terms, if you see these, are going to mean that at some point you are using addition. Okay? Subtraction, some words that go with that. You've got less than, subtracted from, the difference between two things, decreased by, and minus. All right, words that represent multiplication, product, and we've already talked about product. Multiply by, times, so like 4 times 2 would be multiplication. And then the the little word of also, if you see something of something, that operation is also multiplication. All right, and then division, there's only a couple. You've got quotient, and we've talked about quotient already, and you have divided by. I believe that's it. Okay, so make sure you know when you see these words what operation that these go to. All right, also some other things to know. Because in this unit we'll be talking about square roots and cube roots and raising stuff to a certain power. Okay, so these are things that you definitely want to make sure you write down. What does this represent? You have a variable x here, and you're raising it to the number 2. Okay, what this represents is this is a number squared. And we write a number because we don't know what this x represents. It represents a number. We don't know what number yet. So it's a number squared. And your squared is talking about raising it to the second power. All right, you might also see this symbol. Okay, this symbol is the square root. Okay, and then it's the square root of a variable. The variable represents a number that we don't know, so it's the square root of a number. Okay, you might also see this. Now, how is this different than this? Well, you still got the variable x, except this time it's raised to the third instead of raised to the second. Okay, so this is a number, right, that represents the variable, cubed. So instead of a squared, it's now cubed. If you have x to the fourth, right, it'd be a number, and there you would say raised to the fourth power. Okay, if you had a number that was x to the fifth, that would be a number raised to the fifth power. Power being what number you're actually raising your variable to. All right, and then you also might see this. Okay, looks a lot like this, except now you got that little 3 on the outside. Okay, this is a square root symbol, but because of that 3, this is actually the cubed root of a number instead of the square root of a number. So the square part represents the 2, and the cubed part represents the 3. And you want to make sure that you can locate all of these, because you can do the cubed root, a number cubed, you can do the cubed root, you can do the square root, and you can do a number squared all on your calculator. So you want to make sure you can figure out where those buttons are. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to write a verbal, meaning you're going to write out words for each algebraic expression that is here. So this is an algebraic expression because you're only using numbers and variables, and you're going to take these numbers and variables and you're going to write out what they mean. So you have, how you would read this first one is 3x to the fourth power. Okay, so how would you actually write that as a verbal? Okay, the product of 3, okay, because you are multiplying 3 and a variable together. So remember, this is the product, 3 times x, so it's the product of 3 and a number, the number being the variable right here, raised to the fourth power. So your exponent up here, the 4, the variable is being raised to the fourth. Okay, B, you've got the product here again, right? Because you've got 5 times z. Now we know this is raised to the second power, so we know that's z squared. And then now we're adding this 16 to it. Okay, so one way to write that is the sum, because the sum is talking about addition. That's 16, and you're adding 5z squared to it. So it's the sum of both of the two terms, okay, of 5 times the product, right? Multiply times a number. Okay, so 5 times the number that we don't know, that's your variable. And then raised to the 2 is 5 times the number squared. All right, and then since you've already covered the sum, you know that we're adding 16. So it's the sum of 5 times the number squared and then 16. Okay, this one you want to be careful because you've got these parentheses here. When you have parentheses, there's specific wording that you need to use. So you're taking 5 and you're multiplying by this parenthesis here, everything in between. All right, so you've got 5 times, right, which is multiplying, okay, 5 times. Then what you want to say, because you've got the parentheses, is times the quantity. That quantity means you want to multiply by everything inside that parentheses. And now what's in the parentheses? You have the number, you have a number, and you have 4. So one way to say it is you have 5 times the quantity of 4 less than a number. So you've got a number and you've got 4 less than that number. There are different ways that you can write these these algebraic expressions out, so you might want to check with your teacher if you have different answers to see if your answer also works. All right, D. You've got 2x, one term, and then over 5. But this bar right here is dividing. Now, a term that we use about dividing was the quotient. So you've got the quotient of, okay, so you're talking about division between this term on top and the term on the bottom. The term on top is 2 times a number, and the term on the bottom is 5. Okay, so the quotient of 2 times a number and 5. Okay. All right. The 5th example. Now, what's different here? Here, you've got 2 different variables. And we've already seen the cubed root symbol. Okay, so we should know what that means. This is right here, this part right here is the cubed root of a number. And then this is another number. It's not the same number as x, it's a different variable. Again, you're adding them. So you've got a number that represents what y is, plus the cubed root, right? That's what the little 3 is, and the square root sign right here, of another number. Okay, and that another part is crucial because you're not talking about the same variable. And you could have started off this one as the sum of, just like we did up here. It's just another way to say it. But you could also just do a number plus. Okay. All right, and the last one on this page. Now keep in mind, you've got your parentheses here. Okay, and what's inside that parentheses? You've got 3 times a number, and all of that is squared. Okay, so we're going to put the quantity, because what do we want? What is in the parenthesis? Okay, so you got the quantity of 3 times a number. That's what's inside the parentheses, so that's your quantity. And then what are you doing to that inside of the parentheses? You're raising it to the 2nd power, so that's squaring it. So the quantity of 3 times a number squared. And then you're subtracting 10 or minus 10. Okay. All right, the last part of the notes, we're now going to go the opposite way. You're going to write an algebraic expression for each verbal expression. So now everything is written out for you. Now you're going to write the simpler algebraic expression using this. All right, you've got a number t, so the variable you're going to be using is t, more than 6. Okay, more than, right? What operation is that? That's addition. So you've got a number t more than 6. So you've got the number 6, and you've got t, some number, more than that. So in between, right, the number 6, and you're going to be adding t, because it's t more than 6. Okay, so the operation in between those two is going to be a plus sign. Then you've got 10 less than, so there's subtraction involved. The product, what operation is that? That's multiplication of 7 and f. So 10 less than the product of 7 and f. So right here, 7 and f, you know you're going to be multiplying those two together. Okay, so this right here is supposed to be an f. So that's 7 times f. And 10 less than that product, which means you're taking 10 away from that product. So you're subtracting 10 from the product 7f. All right, C, quotient. So remember, quotient is dividing. So you know you're going to have a bar in between a top, a numerator, and a denominator. So the quotient of 2 times a number, so that should give you a hint that 2x is going to be on top, and then you're dividing by 6. So there should be a bar right between those two saying 2x divided by 6. And I'll put a line there to show that we're dividing those two. Okay, so 2 times a number over 6. That's the quotient between those two. All right, D, the square of Sam's age minus twice Jim's age. So minus, we know, is subtraction. The square of Sam's age. So we're taking whatever Sam's age is and we're raising that to the second power. That's what you do when you square something. So you've got s squared, so we're using s for Sam for our variable, and we're squaring it, minus twice Jim's age. Well, when you twice something, you are multiplying by 2, and we're going to use the variable j for Jim, so 2j. So you're taking Sam's age, s, and you're squaring it, and you're subtracting 2 times j, which is Jim's age. All right, E, double the amount of candy and cube the result you get after you double the amount of candy. So doubling candy, again, another word for doubling is the same as twice, so you're multiplying by 2. So if you think of taking candy and using C for candy, and you're going to double that, so 2 times C. Okay, so here's the 2C part, 2 times C, double the candy, and then you're cubing the result you get after you double it. So you actually have to put 2C inside your parentheses because you want to cube all of that. Whatever you get when you multiply 2 times, when you double the candy, you want to cube all of that. So you have to put parentheses around your 2C, and then cubing it means raising it to the third power. Just like squaring something means raising it to the second power. All right, and then the last one. Katie had a bag of Snickers and a bag of Kit Kats. So she's got all these Snickers and so she's got one bag of Snickers and she's got one bag of Kit Kats. And she wants to divide the candy equally among her friends. Well, if you want to divide something equally among your friends, you want to take what you have, right? And you want to divide by how many things you have. Okay? So she's going to take her bag of, where is this? She's going to take all of the Snickers she has. Okay? Snickers is going to be the bag of Snickers, and she's going to add the bag of Kit Kats, and then she's going to divide that by 2 because you want to split the Snickers and the Kit Kats evenly amongst everyone.